Jody, give me a thumbs up when you're ready.
You're ready.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, we have a quorum. As a matter of fact, we have all our board members. So I'd like to call the regular Board of Education meeting to order on Monday, February 2nd.
Yeah, thumbs up when you're ready. You're
At
ready. Okay, perfect.
7:03. All right, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. All right, I want to thank everyone before we begin. This is not a normal date, so thank you everyone for juggling your schedules. We are pleased that we have a Student Board of Education representative from Weston High School. And Megan, who do you want to introduce tonight?
Sure. Tonight we have Jack Doyle, who's a member of our Student Government Executive Board, and Jack is going to share some of the goings on at the high school. Thanks, Jack.
Perfect. Best part of the meeting.
Over the past month, the high school has been having just a lot happen. It's been a very busy time of the year. And I just firstly like to start off by talking about the Holocaust Remembrance Day with Annie Bernstein. And that was a whole school event. And there were some technical errors here and there, but overall, I feel like it was just a huge success. And I feel like everyone learned like more about the Holocaust and the trauma that people had to go through at the time. And it was just very, very powerful for everyone there. And yeah. And then we also had a guest speaker with Annie Sarkany, and I wasn't able to go there, but I heard that it was again very insightful. A lot happened. He got really in detail and personal about his story, which is very, important that we pass these stories on to future generations so that we never forget what happened. And for me, being a senior, this next part is pretty nice, is that as seniors, we finally finished Portrait of the Graduate after a long 4 years. So that's always just a nice sigh of relief to have that done. But in the future, we have our Super Bowl pep rally, where we're introducing our new mascot for the first time on February 5th. So that should be very exciting. And we have this fun idea to have the old mascot and the new mascot battle each other. So that should just be really fun. And during that pep rally, we're going to have our teachers versus students basketball game, which is just always a slam dunk hit. Everyone always loves that. I find that to be the best part of the year for me personally. And again, February, it's Black History Month, and we will be having our Black History Month assembly on February 12th, where the whole school does workshops in English class to kind of understand and know more about what's going on. And we actually have this like theme for this year, which is that we are the archive. So, we have to tell these stories. We have to go out and make the change that we want to see. And finally, the Lunar New Year assembly at the end of the year just ties it all back together and makes Weston High School a very like exciting time. And we just have a lot of stuff going on right now.
Thank you so much for that report. I think we all want to go back to high school, and we definitely want to follow you around. So thank you for all the tremendous, serious, and just the range of activities going on. So thank you for your report. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack.
All right, next on the agenda, I am asking for the approval of the minutes. Are there any questions or comments on the minutes? All right, if not, may I have a motion?
Move that the minutes of the meetings were presented for review There being no corrections, the minutes are approved as presented.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Lisa. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I had to, I think, abstain on the minutes, right? Wasn't I at my?
No,
Okay.
Peter.
Just for the
No.
nation.
Jody?
You don't need to abstain from approving the minutes. You don't have to be present in order to be able to approve them. You're basically just acknowledging that the minutes in front of you
Oh,
were
okay.
correct. And that you agree with them.
Oh, I acknowledge and agree with them. I'm just, well, voted them because I wasn't there.
All right, Well, thanks for that clarification, Jody. All right, moving along to public comment. And I'll do our usual preamble. The board welcomes the opportunity to hear from members of the public about matters concerning the schools. Public comment is an important chance for the board to receive input and feedback. We listened attentively. While we value and pay close attention, it is our practice not to respond substantively or sometimes at all, sometimes not at all during public comment. There are reasons for this. First, engaging in a discussion on a non-agenda item could violate the board's obligation to comply with the Freedom of Information Act. Second, the board or the administration may not be prepared to discuss certain matters raised. Third, the board develops its meeting agenda carefully to ensure that the board addresses matters that are pressing or relevant at the time of the meeting. We encourage members of the public with specific concerns or questions or complaints about our schools to reach out directly to Superintendent Forty. You may also email the board at our email address, boardofelducation@westonps.org. Okay, Jody, are there members of the public who want to comment?
Yes, there is. I see Kelly James. Kelly, I'm going to promote you from an attendee to a panelist. When I do, you're going to see a box scroll across the bottom of your screen. Please accept it. Once you're a panelist, kindly turn on your camera, state your street address and your full name, and then I will give you 5 minutes to speak. And I am promoting you now. Okay, Kelly, you're here. You can turn on your camera and unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
A little low, but we can hear you.
All right, I'll talk loud.
Perfect.
Good evening. My name is Kelly James, and I live at 11 Bernhard Drive. First, thank you for prioritizing the campus revitalization project. That's a tough one. I appreciate the thoughtful consideration of both facilities and long-term planning for our district. I'm speaking tonight as a parent with children currently at Hurlbut Elementary and Weston Intermediate School. Like most families, I'm completely supportive of investing in our schools. I understand and agree that our facilities require attention, particularly at the middle school, which has been appropriately identified as a priority based on age, infrastructure deficiencies, and learning conditions. I'm also deeply concerned about the real-world impact of major renovation and displacement while students are actively learning in these buildings. We know that children thrive on stability, routine, and a sense of belonging. Large-scale construction, especially when it requires students to be relocated or to attend school amid ongoing renovation, introduces disruption that goes far beyond physical space. It affects instruction, social emotional well-being, staff morale, and the overall school experience, especially for elementary school students who rely heavily on a sense of place. As the BOE and district work to confirm the long-term educational model and grade configuration, I urge decision makers to prioritize solutions that minimize disruption for students and educators. The school experience should be weighed as heavily as cost, logistics, and timeline. Our schools absolutely need investment, but how students experience school every day matters just as much. I hope that as plans move forward, student impact remains at the center of every decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kelly. Give me just a moment and I will move you back. Is there anybody else that would like to speak for public comment this evening? If so, please click the raise your hand button and I will promote you. Nope, I do not see anybody else raising their hands at this time.
Okay, thank you, Jody.
Okay,
Let's move on to old business. Item A, Weston Board of Education Policies, Regulations, and Bylaws. This is the second read of the list you see on the agenda. Are there comments or questions or other things we should know? Is there then a motion?
So I was just waiting to see if anybody had something substantive to say, but I just noticed a typo in
Oh,
the student discipline policy. When you fill in the blank for parent/guardian, in many places, there are 2 S's. So I would just check that before you publish it.
okay, thanks for picking that up. Okay, with the typos in mind, now is there a motion?
I just want to say that I think the student discipline code, which was 52 pages, was excellent. It was really well done and well thought out, very clear. And even though it was that long, it was very necessary and very clear.
Thank you.
All right, I think I'm up and I was prepared for one of the 2 motions, and I believe, Jody, I'm going to get the right one since we are doing a correction. I believe it's move that the policies, regulations, and/or bylaws were presented for review. With corrections noted, the documents were approved.
Okay, is there a second? Lisa, was that a second? Okay, thank you.
Okay, sorry, the audio. I second.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, any further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? All right, well, thank you, policy committee and staff. And I agree with Lisa that that discipline policy is, very important and comprehensive and all of that. So it's great that we have it now updated. So thank you. All right, on to new business. The first item is the consent agenda. And just a couple of highlights. Julie, I know that you would like to speak a little bit about the staffing updates.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Typically, we don't spend a lot of time on the staffing update, but there are, in particular, 4 notable names on the update this evening that I wanted to just take a few moments to recognize. There are 4 teachers who have provided their notice in connection with the district's early retirement incentive. They will be leaving us at the end of this school year. And so if you'll indulge me, I would like to take just a few moments to recognize each of these 4 people. Gina Arena was hired as a part-time art teacher at Hurlbut Elementary School in August of 2003. Over time, her assignment grew to a full-time position at Weston High School, where she has served for the past 19 years, teaching studio art, drawing, painting, ceramics, photography, contemporary media design, and I'm sure I left something out. So Gina, a well-rounded art teacher in our district. Bill Nader began his career in Weston in August of 2000. In his 26 years in district, Mr. Mader has passionately engaged students at both Weston High School and Weston Middle School in the study of history. Andrea Noble arrived in Weston in the fall of 2001, when she was contracted as a reading intervention teacher at Hurlbut Elementary School. In the 2009-10 school year, Ms. Noble took on the role of curriculum and instruction leader in language arts and social studies, a position in which she has provided peer leadership and professional development to her elementary colleagues at both Hess and WIS. Finally, Amanda Quaintance came to Weston in 1994 when she was hired as an instructional aide at Weston Middle School. In the 1995-96 school year, Ms. Quaintance assumed the role of classroom teacher, and she has worked during her 32-year tenure in Weston in 5th grade, in 6th grade social studies, and in Project Challenge. So on behalf of the district tonight, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to these teachers for their many years of dedicated service to Weston's students and families, and to wish them well in their retirement at the end of this school year.
Okay, thank you, and we recognize the retirees and their amazing service and contributions to Weston. They are obviously the backbone of our excellence, and they leave quite a legacy. So thank you, Julie, for the overview. And I'm sure I'm speaking for the board, and we want to thank each and every one of them for their years of service and their impact on our kids. So thank you, thank you. Next on the consent agenda were the gifts, and just a short shout out to the Weston High School PTO for their donation. This is another donation to the speaker, Harlan Cohen, on post-secondary planning at the high school. So that sounds like a tremendous draw. So again, we're really appreciative of the PTO and all their donations. So thank you, Weston PTO. Now, is there a motion for the
Move.
consent agenda?
Actually, hold on, before we make that motion, I
Oh,
also
sure.
want, I want to recognize the fact that the Weston Educational Foundation also made a contribution towards.
Right, I think we did that last time, but yes, you're right.
No, I think, yeah, it's just on here. So I just want to make sure that they got their
Absolutely, absolutely.
recognition. Thanks.
Hopefully I did it last time as well. It's a partnership.
Yes.
All right. Move that the Weston Board of Education accept the consent agenda as presented.
There a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, that carries as well. All right, the next item on the agenda is school facilities, campus revitalization and planning, looking at grade configuration. This is a discussion item. I want to, in advance, thank Superintendent Forty and the staff for preparing answers to questions from our earlier meeting on facilities. For those watching in the public, the Board of Ed's been holding special meetings around facilities planning, and we've been reviewing all the studies that have been done in prior years. We've been trying to update information and collect all the information that we feel will be relevant as we move forward. And a piece of the puzzle is grade configuration. We know what we have now works. And we also know that as we look towards facilities planning, we want those spaces to be great for our kids, also efficiently used, and also as fiscally responsible as we can make them in terms of their costs. So with that said, again, Superintendent Forty, I want to thank you for working with your staff so quickly to give us some comments on the various grade configurations. These questions, not exactly in this format, but for those historians of school facilities planning, if you go back starting in 2017, there have been questions about grade configurations asked, and our board has added to sort of a different, some different specifics. So we appreciate the staff working on those and updating those kinds of questions and ways of examining. So anyway, with all that said, Superintendent Forty, take it away. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody.
So this work began with a clear charge from the Board of Education to understand the educational implications of different grade configuration models and to work towards determining which configurations are the most educationally sound and appropriate for our district. As we begin this discussion, I think it's important to emphasize that each grade configuration that we examined, that the board put forth, and there were five, is educationally viable. The purpose of this analysis is not to label any one model as inherently right or wrong, but more so to clearly articulate the instructional benefits, the operational considerations, and the areas of risk associated with each configuration so that informed decisions could be made. All of the models that we reviewed that the Board of Ed provided us, the five models, were done so through the same consistent lens. The team and with principal input, we looked at how each configuration supports high quality teaching and learning, developmental appropriateness, continuity of services for students, staffing flexibility and related service delivery, and equity of student experience. So to answer the board's question thoughtfully, we intentionally began with instructional and developmental priorities, not facilities, not cost, not logistics. So you're going to see a chart in a little bit, and it reflects this exact approach. Each configuration was examined using a consistent academic framework, and it focused on instructional coherence, standards alignment, service delivery, staffing considerations, and the overall student experience. In other words, the work was grounded in a commitment to teaching and learning first. And so it really reflects careful attention to how students grow over time, how instruction is delivered across grade levels, how school structures can best support students' academic, social, and emotional development throughout their educational journey. While the board didn't give us our current configuration to look into, I just want to give a high level summary through some of these educational considerations just to get us started. And then I'm going to thread the rest of the models that the board provided us through the same type of considerations. So our current grade configuration continues to align strongly with the academic considerations that we're going to see in a chart. The structure and the configuration, it preserves the coherent standards bands in alignment with Connecticut core standards K2, 3.5, 6.8, 9.12. It supports developmentally appropriate instructional models, including the grade 5 dyad and the established middle school teaming model. It enables continuity of services for our English learners, special education students, and other related services with minimal disruption. It limits the number of transitions while still allowing students to develop leadership identity as they move through each building. And from an academic standpoint, the configuration provides a very balanced, stable framework that supports both instructional quality and student belonging. And I think it also allows the district to focus the energy on improving teaching and learning rather than managing instructional and structural complexity and trying to mitigate risk factors. So that's a very high level overview of our current configuration brought through some of the educational considerations formulated in the chart. We're going to move on now to Model A. This was one of the models that the board asked us to look into. Model A is a pre-K 4 school, a 5-8 school, and a 9-12 school. This configuration is a sound alternative from an academic perspective. One of the most compelling academic advantages is the reduction in transitions across pre-K 12. There's fewer transitions, and it generally supports stronger relationships and increased stability and greater continuity for students and families. The larger grade spans also provide increased flexibility in staffing and service delivery, which can support instructional consistency and really good deployment of our specialized staff. The key educational consideration in this model that may need a little bit of attention is grade 5 becomes the entry point into the middle school environment. And so while this can be academically viable, it represents a shift from what we currently have. And we would need to be very intentional to ensure that grade 5 students are supported socially, emotionally, and instructionally during that transition. Instructionally, this model, grade configuration model, would require a redesigned structure in grade 5 and 6 using a dyad model before transitioning to full teaming in grade 7 and 8. And this shift would necessitate some professional learning, an expanded instructional capacity for grade 6 teachers, perhaps, and some adjustments to planning time and special area staffing. But with a level of intentionality, this configuration model can support strong outcomes. And we would just need to be thoughtful about the earlier introduction to the middle school structures in grade 5 than students currently experience. And so that's a very high level overview of Model A. Model B, that configuration is a pre-K 1, a grades 2 through 5, a 6-8, and a 9-12. Model B aligns well with a few academic priorities, particularly at key developmental stages. It allows for some strong early childhood specialization in pre-K 1 and preserves that traditional coherent grade 6 through 8 middle school model. And the consistency there continues to support the adolescent development, the instructional depth, and the effective teaming structures that exist there. There is a little bit of a trade-off in Model B, and it's this increased complexity in the earlier grades. With 4 school transitions across a child's pre-K through 12 educational journey, students and families experience more frequent changes at the younger ages, and the instructional handoff between pre-K 1 and grades 2 and 5 is significant, particularly because foundational K2 standards are split across 2 buildings. So from an academic and operational perspective, it places some heavier demands on some curriculum articulation at that earlier level, some staffing coordination, and transition planning and communication. But it is viable, this model, and can support strong instruction. It just requires a little bit more of an intensive lens to look at the systems and a little bit more oversight to maintain coherence and consistency in that grade 1 to 2 handoff. Model C was a pre-KK, a grade 1 through 4 building, grades 5 through 8 building, and 9 through 12 building. Model C, it does create a strong separation for early childhood by isolating pre-K and K, which allows for focused attention on some of our youngest learners. But don't forget, some of our youngest learners don't attend pre-K here. So students would be spending 1 year in kindergarten at a school before transitioning to another school. It provides a clear early childhood identity for pre-KK. It preserves that nice coherent 5-8 middle grade model that all can support both the teaming and the dyad, and allows leadership opportunities to emerge earlier for students in grades 4 and also, as we do right now, in grades 8. While this configuration has merit, it does introduce a very early transition after students only spend 1 year in a school in kindergarten, and a very, very heavy transition and handoff from grades kindergarten to grade 1. And that is a very sensitive point in a child's learning trajectory, as foundational literacy and numeracy instruction really has to remain tightly sequenced. And it does break the K2 standards band over 2 schools. Because early grade standards are spread across those 2 buildings, like the instructional coherence will really depend very heavily on careful planning and coordination on the district's part. Narrow early grade spans sort of limit staffing flexibility as well and increase reliance on shared or itinerant specialists across buildings. Similar to Model A, this configuration will like I said, would require a dyad model in the middle school for 5, 6, followed by a teaming model in grades 7, 8. And again, we'd have to take a look at grade 5 entering the middle school at an earlier level than grade 6. And so, while Model C it's viable, it does introduce some more clearly early disruption and some complexities than some of the other grade configuration models, particularly during the years when the consistency for the foundational school skills really matter most. Model D for the configuration was a pre-K 2, a grade 3 through 6, a 7, 8, and a 9, 12. Model D keeps grade 6 with younger peers, which can support developmental readiness and social emotional needs for some students. This model provides a strong upper elementary span for grades 3 through 6. It allows students additional time before transitioning fully to the middle school environment. But it splits the traditional middle grade band 6 through 8 across 2 buildings, which weakens the instructional coherence and complicates the middle school teaming models a bit. Students experience only 2 years, grades 7 and 8, in a middle school setting, limiting some opportunities for leadership development, identity building, and sustained relationships in such a short period of time. Academically, this type of fragmentation can create some challenges in staffing and service delivery and curriculum alignment. So instructional teams are going to have to really coordinate across buildings, and staffing flexibility is reduced to that due to that narrow 7 through 8 grade span. So again, Model D introduces I think, some more significant structural complexity with fewer academic benefits, increasing some risks without offering like a clear instructional advantage over some of the other configuration models. And then finally, Model E. This is the magnet school model. And before I go into sort of some of the educational things, I have a colleague at the state who I had the opportunity to speak with relative to magnet school funding. And she was very good in helping to answer some of the questions that I had. The district under this model would require creating a magnet school for grades 6 through 8 as the board desired. However, it has to be noted that only 75% of students who currently reside in Weston and are residents would be able to attend the magnet school, because magnet school funding requires the other 25% of enrolled students to come from outside of district in an effort to reduce economic and racial isolation. So we'd have to look to partner with more urban areas to increase the diverse nature of the school itself. So again, if we have more than 75% of our Weston students in grades 6 through 8 really excited to attend this middle school, only 75% of them will be permitted to attend. The other 25% of our Weston students would need to reside in an alternative 6 through 8 location parallel to this magnet school program. And conversely, if we don't have a lot of interest, if only 50% of our Weston students who reside here in town wanted to go to the middle school, we'd have to house the other 50% of students elsewhere and seek to increase the enrollment externally from sending districts to make sure we're meeting our enrollment requirements for grant funding. I know there was some thoughts about, the percentage on the reimbursement for new construction. The entire school, in order to get up to 80% on new construction, the entire school would have to be built solely for the magnet school program. So I just wanted to give that little piece of information prior to talking a little bit about Model E. And it introduces a magnet pathway, which is awesome because it intends to promote innovation and choice within the middle grades. It offers like families and an alternative pathway option. It creates opportunities for specialized programming within a magnet structure. But from an academic perspective, we have to think really carefully because this configuration with a magnet school is probably the most complex and highest risk configuration because we've got to build 6 through 8 programming outside of that magnet school setting as well for any Weston resident students who do not get in or do not attend. And so it creates 2 very separate, distinct 6 through 8 student experiences, which can be difficult if you're looking through it as through an equity or an access or a consistency lens. And so to mitigate these concerns, the district would really need to duplicate and tightly align staffing, programs and services, MTS structures, and any alternative curricular programming in separate ways. So, and from a human capital perspective, the model requires some duplication of specialized staff and leadership roles and support services. So, it will take some extraordinary oversight, not to fragment the student experience if this configuration with a magnet school was to be considered. It offers great innovation and concept, and it carries but it carries some significant implementation and equity risks that we'd have to be very thoughtful in planning in order to do it correctly. So when viewed collectively, this analysis highlights an important reality. Like grade configuration matters because it can either support or complicate strong instruction and academic considerations. At the same time, the key takeaway from all of this work is that strong academic outcomes are driven first and foremost by instructional quality, coherence, and consistency, not by configuration alone. So structure matters most in how well it enables those elements to function. So when we consider academic and other factors presented as part of this chart as a whole, our current configuration continues to provide a strong balance of instructional coherence, developmental alignment, and stability for students and families. In addition to alternative configurations that demonstrate some educational viability when examined through the same lens are Model A, as it can support some strong outcomes, provided there's intentional planning around that grade 5 to ensure developmental readiness and instructional alignment. And Model B, which preserves the strong middle school instructional model while being very deliberate about the coordination in the early grades, particularly around the transition between grades 1 and 2, and ensuring that those foundational K2 standard cluster skills remain cohesive across those 2 buildings. The remaining models, C, D, and E, they're educationally viable in theory, but when examined through some of these priorities and considerations, each introduces, I think, more of an increased risk across multiple factors, segmenting a little bit instructional coherence, disjointed transitions, some restrictions around staffing flexibility and the continuity of services and the equity of student experience. And so those risks would require a large amount and very significant and sustained mitigation to ensure that we're having really good outcomes for our students. And so ultimately, this whole analysis really reinforces the importance of grounding structural decisions in their impact on teaching and learning. And the goal is not change for its own sake, but really ensuring that any of the configurations that are viable, that they support high quality instruction, stable relationships, and equitable opportunities for all students over time. I just want to note that in the chart that you looked at the top are each one of those grade configuration models, and in parentheses, you can see the enrollment. And that is basically an October 1, 2025 enrollment snapshot that was just carried through each of the configurations, so you can see, relatively speaking, the size of the school. I don't know if any of my team members have any other thoughts or would like to interject, but you are always welcome to do so. If not, I am going to just pause here, see if there's any questions or if you'd like to dialogue around anything further before I offer some final thoughts.
I'll just jump in first with a again, thank you for doing this work. And second, I just speaking for myself, but I'm sure most of the board, I love the way that you laid it out so thoughtfully and put the pieces together with different just different facets of the educational experience for our kids. You know, academic, social, emotional transitions for families, special education services, the number of transitions, all the things that you have outlined here. So I think it's a lot of information, very well organized and presented. And so with that, I'll open up to see if there are any questions. I just want to put a word of caution here that we are listening tonight. We're not deciding anything. This is more information, more pieces of the puzzle for us. And these are very critical pieces of the puzzle. And again, I love the way it's been laid out. So anyway, so I'll open it up to questions or general comments. But remember, we're not making any decisions tonight.
I'd like to say something about the decision we're going to make tonight. No, I'm teasing, Deb.
I could kill you.
I just had to say that. No, I actually, I want to echo what Deb said, and this is actually so well put together. But this is great information, and I would love to have this document so I can really read it over in great detail and really simmer on it, because I think that we do have to make some decisions, and we obviously want to make the best decisions for the children in the district, for their educational outcomes. So I would just love to have more time to simmer with this document. But it's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Erica, just a quick question on Model A. Moving the 5th grade into the middle school, let's say, with 6th, 7th, and 8th, can you talk about, and I think you brushed on it, if I may have missed the specifics, does grade 5 then move to a team model from the dyad, or how does that work, and sort of what is the recommendation, let's say, in a situation like that where it's 5th through 8th?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like our recommendation would be that grades 5 through 6 remain in a dyad model and grades 7 and 8 transition to a teaming model.
But
Okay.
isn't 6 in a team
I
model
thought
now?
6 was in a teaming model.
6 is in a teaming right now. Yep.
Okay.
So
Right.
we
So
would
you-
revert it back to a dyad. Yeah.
So you would prefer 6 moving to a dyad versus 5 moving to a teaming. Just can you talk about just I don't know that I would know the specifics as to why. Could you talk about just puts and takes to why you would do that?
Yeah, I think because developmentally it would be good for 6th graders to continue to experience the dyad model beyond just one grade level, grade 5. And if you have a 5 through 8 building, you're essentially creating like a lower middle school and an upper middle school. And so you have 5th and 6th graders who have sort of they're on their way out of elementary school and they need a little something different. And the dyad model is a stepping stone to the teaming model. And so over the course of the 4 years, instead of 5th graders only having 1 year of the dyad model, they will have 2 years, grades 5 and 6, and then we transition them to a teaming model in grades 7 through 8, further preparing them for middle school.
So do you think, just one last question on this, do you think then what we have today, it sounds like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like from your perspective, it sounds like what we have today is a bit, I wouldn't say suboptimal, but it would be more helpful for those students in 6th grade to continue with the dyad in sort of their transition. Is that fair to say, or? Yeah.
It's hard to say. I think I would make the change if we were creating this 5 through 8 school with a lower and an upper middle school experience. I think the middle school does a great job right now with sixth graders in the teaming model, and the dyad model does prepare them. It's just students are in it for only for 1 year. And there's a lot of additional sports through the workshop that is a little unique in a teaming model where students can have opportunities for additional supports in all grade levels, not just sixth grade as well. It seems to be working at the middle school, but if there's an opportunity to make a change, if a configuration happened, I think we should look more closely at that opportunity. And perhaps after surveying and or really investigating the student experience, we may find that they're better off in the teaming model. But I just thought if you had this configuration, it provided you with an opportunity to sort of create this lower and upper middle school experience. Um, it might be a nice transition for kids to do 2 and 2.
Right. And going from fourth to fifth to let's say a teaming model in fifth would be a pretty abrupt change from your perspective, I guess.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
I also, I know that this was discussed in a previous budget workshop. I actually thought Ms. D'Amico did a pretty nice job of explaining with her own children why the teaming model is not ideal for a lot of fifth graders. I don't know if she wants to chime in.
Yes, she did.
I will just say that it was that experience of being able to communicate with all of the teachers as intimately as maybe you would like to do, to have that personalized relationship with parents and teachers. It is more challenging the more staff you put on the team. So that I was trying to make that point that keeping it to 2 in that fifth grade helps us to make sure that we can personalize that experience.
So, sorry, so I have a lot of questions. I'll go back to them after David because I didn't mean to interrupt David, but I did have a similar question to Michael's question about like the sixth grade dyad versus team. And I'm wondering, thank you, Erica, for your explanation, but I'm wondering if any of the principals have thoughts about sixth grade in a dyad versus team.
Yeah, I mean, I think like the teaming model that we have now is working. Whenever when you reduce teachers, you are creating a little bit more personalization. I mean, the idea of a teaming model is you have they have more teachers. They do work together in tandem, but less teachers gives each teacher more time. With their students. It creates maybe some interesting interdisciplinary opportunities too, which you can do with a full, four teacher team. I don't know, to reiterate what Erica said, I don't know if one model is necessarily better than the other. But I do think there is a fit, like a 5-6 fit, where developmentally they're relatively close. Like if you came up to the middle school and you looked at sixth graders versus eighth graders, there's a pretty big developmental difference between those two, but fifth and sixth grade seem to be are a little bit closer. So the model may work there pretty well. I don't know how the kids would feel about it. I think they like switching from teacher to teacher, but we would have to ask them at some point, obviously.
And similarly, I'm also curious about what Ms. D'Amico thinks about fifth graders joining, not being in WIS.
Well, of course, we would miss our fifth graders, but I think we need to be open to all of the options. And I do think they're both viable options. I do think, 3, 4, 5 is a great when you look at the curriculum and that grade band, they go very nicely together. Third, fourth, and fifth, the way we teach, the way we instruct. Third grade are the building blocks that take us to fifth grade, and fifth grade kind of completes that grade band. So I feel really great about how those come together and how they work together in a building, in a school, if we're looking at this from a curricular lens. I do think, as Jason said, fifth and sixth graders are very developmentally similar, and so they could work together as well. I think there are options. But as a grade band, I really do think third, fourth, and fifth grade work very nicely together. And our teachers work very nicely together in supporting each other through the curriculum in both mathematics and language arts.
I can also speak to, I was in a 5 to 8 middle school. I was the assistant principal of a 5 to 8 middle school. And I started the year they brought the fifth grade into the building. So there was a lot of nervousness from the families and the parents, but it is doable. There's a lot of ways to do it. You can give fifth grade their own wing. And to Jason's, experience too, there's some similarities between fifth and sixth grade. So it is doable, and there are schools that have done it successfully.
Laura, while you were unmuted, I thought you had some really good thoughts and insight relative to some of the other models, like the pre-KK versus the pre-K1. And I was wondering if you would feel comfortable just sort of sharing your thoughts on that and your reflections. I thought they were very insightful and very useful.
Thank you. I would love to. I wasn't sure if we were done with the middle school conversation, but I do have a lot of thoughts about the early elementary years and keeping some consistency and some stability for the students. Those early elementary years in school are so critical. And for students, the vast majority of our students come into school for the first time in kindergarten. While we do have a preschool program, it's not the majority of the students attending it. So bringing students in for one of the models was for kindergarten. I think is really problematic because they're only in one building for 1 year, many of them. That's hard on the families. It's very hard on the students. You don't build a lot of stability with the students. And in addition to, Erica spoke so well about that early elementary standards continuum. A big part of what we do in those early elementary years is help students feel comfortable and learn what school's all about. That they feel happy at school, they feel successful, they feel like it's a place where they can learn and grow, and that sense of belonging is just beginning. So creating that sense of belonging, and in a year they're off to another school, I think is pretty problematic. There are I know districts that do it, and in the larger districts I've worked in, sometimes you're consolidating students from kindergarten just because there are, 12, 13 elementary schools. But that's not, the beauty of Weston is we really know our students well, and we're able to wrap around not just the student care, but also the families. And helping the families become comfortable in a building is critical too. I also believe that transitioning first graders is a little early. If you have most of your students are only in a building for kindergarten and first grade, and then they're moving on to another building, you're a transitional building. You're transitioning them in for kindergarten, which takes months to build relationships with families, student belonging with students, a school community where they feel like they're part of a student body. And then in first grade, you're already working on transitioning them out. Families reach out to us very early in the year when they know that there's a transition coming. So I've already had a lot of conversations with some of our second grade families about the transition to WIS. Some families are nervous about it, they're worried about it, and it's mid-year. So being a K1 building is very transitional. Pre-K to 2, K2, then you have 3 years, gives you a lot more stability. And even beyond that, K3, K4. But transitioning with, just 1 year in a building or two, I think has a lot of problems. I hope I remembered everything we talked about, Erica.
Yes, thank you, Laura.
Can I ask a question? Because I actually was going to ask you about the difference between these transitions. And David, I still know that I don't want to jump ahead of you. I just want to ask questions while they're relevant to what people are saying. Can you elaborate just a little bit more on why that transition is hard between grades 1 to 2 or versus grades 2 to 3. I understand that the administration, like you and Mr. Paler and the special teachers, like they're different. But for a student, they're not yet going to a dyad model or a team model. They're just going to another homeroom with another class of children that they've already been going to school with. So I just am trying to picture why it's such a heavy time or such a significant time.
Well, because they're moving buildings. So everything that's familiar to them, getting off the bus and walking to class, getting out of the car and being greeted by the adults who may be out there, those are familiar to them year after year. So while they may be going down to a self-contained classroom, one teacher with a group of students for the day, everything else about the building is familiar. They know how to walk the halls. They know who all the people are. They know where the office is. They know where the nurse is. Families have relationships and familiarity with the routines and the expectations. And we're creating not just it within that classroom, but we're creating a school culture. We're creating a community of learners across classrooms, across grades. And anytime you transition, even the transition from kindergarten to first grade in the same building feels big for some students and families. They're nervous. This is what I know versus this is an unknown. And the younger a child is, the less experience I think they have with that and the fewer tools they have in their toolbox to manage it. It's similar to when children come in from preschool into kindergarten. In preschool, they have one teacher. There's a lot of students they're coming to Hurlbut with from their preschool in the community, but they're entering a new building. So it is a transition.
Okay,
And
thanks.
Laura, could I just add one thing to what you said? That was beautiful and so well said. And I would just say also our support staff, so our social workers, our school psychologists, our special area teachers, art teacher, music teacher, they really support our students in a lot of ways. And so when you do that transition, all of those people who support our students who need the most support are now different. And so they have to build those relationships over again. And that can be really challenging for a first grader, second grader. It can be challenging at any age, but I think it could be particularly challenging for a 6 or 7-year-old.
Thank you, Laura and Jen.
I have a couple of questions. And this chart's really helpful. I think I'm going to do it justice, Julie, but I created a little rubric. I think it's a rubric, just with what I perceive as positives and what I perceive as negatives. And I don't know though how to weigh those things. So for example, are transitions more impactful, like less transitions more impactful than something else? Is the natural grade configurations where the curriculum is put together for a certain number of grades and you might not see the actual final product until that student gets to fourth grade or fifth grade? Like, how do you weigh, how does someone like myself weigh what appears to be a positive? Is one positive, like a transition, worth more or more valuable than something else? I don't even know who that question's pointed towards, but probably Erica or Tina.
It would be hard. It would be hard to weight them, but I can tell you transitions are important and handoffs are important. Some handoffs developmentally are at better points than others. Like if it came down to a kindergarten to first grade handoff versus a first grade to second grade handoff, like you'd have to think about the developmental nature of the students, how many years, as Laura said, they've spent in the same school, and what would it's a transition, so it's going to have an impact. And Tracy just told me the other day too that, when kids go from second grade to third grade, there's a dip and a transition. When kids go from fifth grade to sixth grade, there's a transition, there's a dip. Eighth grade to ninth grade, right? Just naturally. So through these configurations, weighing where that transition happens and the developmental nature of the student and how well or how many experiences they've had in order to process and accommodate that change, emotionally, socially, cognitively, is important to think about. I mean, obviously the standards are clustered in a certain way, by the state, K2, 3, 5, 6, 8, 9, 12, and they're in bands, um, for progression and coherence, importance. So, when you're breaking a cluster of standards, it's not impossible to do it over two schools, but you have to be a little thoughtful about it. And Tina can weigh in about the curricular implications and sort of scope and sequencing, or things that we might have to adjust from a curricular perspective or a program perspective to accommodate that, because we've written our curriculum, our scope and sequence around those standard grade level band clusters. Um, it's difficult to say is one more important than the other. What I do know is that, while there's not a lot of research around grade configurations as the, key variable in terms of the success of a school or the academic, cognitive, or social, emotional success of a child, there's research out there that says that teacher quality, curriculum coherence, transitions, programming and support staff, how you're running your MTSS, like those are all really important factors in terms of rating or impacting a school's success. And so, we've thought about it a little holistically, and what may be a little bit more important at the lower levels may be less important at the upper levels. Like transition at the lower levels is really, really important. Transition at the upper levels is important, but it may not be as important as it is at the lower levels. So, you know, the analysis wasn't trying to rank or advocate for a particular structure. It was more about ensuring that like any conversation we're having about grade configuration is grounded in this clear understanding of how instructional coherence, developmental alignment, staffing capacity and flexibility, service delivery, and all those things come together to shape what we want to be the best possible student experience ever in our school district, with holding on to that personalization and that individualization that we talked about through the budget process. And so structures like that matter because of, and configurations matter because of the conditions they create for all of those things around teaching and learning.
So you
And so,
kind of, yeah.
and
So
so
yeah.
I think this work really affirms the importance of stability, intentionality, and alignment, and that strong outcomes are built through consistent instruction, trusted relationships, and systems that allow us as educators to focus our energy on students rather than navigating unnecessary complexities due to a configuration.
So you kind of, and I'm not advocating for Model A per se, but I know what we have today. So you kind of walked into my next two questions, which is one of the things that I ranked as green or good was two things actually. One of them is larger grade spans support flexible allocation of teachers and specialists. And I think what you just said is that what really impacts the students is the quality of the teacher at the front of the classroom, the quality of the administrators, the leadership. So it seems like when I look horizontally across the chart, A was the strongest relative to the flexibility, I guess, of teachers and specialists. And I'll tie in my next piece because you can just let me know if I'm reading it right or if I'm looking at it wrong. And then when I look at the social emotional piece, it looks like to me, the upside to that is that it starts at, is it larger groupings so that you're starting at a younger age, or is larger groupings so that it's more diverse?
Larger groupings so that I think when Tina talked about this in the budget process, so that you have more kids who you can put in the same group who might have a similar focus that may need additional supports.
Okay. So those two things, like again, when I looked at it just from a lens of a non-educator, and I started looking at things that to me look like a net positive. So I did sort of positive, neutral, negative. Those are a couple of things that stood out to me as positive. And then when I looked to the right in the chart, I didn't, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the other models, but those stood out as net positives. Is that a fair assessment that those by themselves, and again, they're not weighted, but those things by themselves, the fewer transitions, the better access to specialists, the larger groups for social emotional learning, those are net positives?
Yes, yeah, those are things I talked about when I gave the high level summary, and those are net positives. And each model has pros and cons, right? With all those positives, we really need to be thoughtful about grade 5 now, because now you have 5th graders in the same building as 8th graders, and how do we appropriately design the day so that it's developmentally appropriate for that wide range of development within kids?
And if my last question is, and this might be for Jason, if you could pick dyad versus the teaming model for 6th grade, if staffing and money, budget, classrooms, nothing was out of reach, and someone said to you, Jason, would you prefer the dyad or the teaming model for 6th grade? Would you have a preference?
Um, it the short answer is probably not. I mean, I know the teaming model better. I know what we do with, how we approach it. The one thing I'll say about as the kids get older is the content gets more complex. So you begin to have teachers specialize in particular areas, and there is some real value in that as um, we think about like what a social studies classroom would look like or a language arts classroom. Um, I think the trade-off with 5th grade is, I mean, with the two teachers, is you get more personalization. At a very important time in students' lives, they really get to know their teachers really well. So there's trade-offs. I don't know. I'd have to really think about it. I'm more grounded in the four teacher model and what we can do with it. But I wouldn't say I'm tied to it completely either. So I don't know if that really answers it, but.
It just kind of ties into if we wound up combining 5th through 8th. It sounds like, I think Nicole brought this up, or you may have said it as well. The 6th grade would go to a dyad model. And so going back to like the net positives and negatives, I was just
This is like
looking to see if the 6th grade, if 5th grade wound up in that building and the 6th grade therefore went to a dyad model, would that be a net positive, neutral, or a negative for the 6th graders?
Yeah.
And I'm not putting you on the spot.
David, I hear your question. I think, somewhere there's a cart and a horse. And so I think when we get into exactly, now we have to start figuring out, our next presentation at the end of the month is about, back to the actual facilities. So what we're hearing is that grade 5 through 8 could work, and that, you'd have some discussions about what is the best thing to do with 5th grade. But I don't know that we need to have that right now. I think your questions are excellent, but I only think they'll be relevant later if, in fact, the four-wall thing, the buildings, are going to necessitate that conversation.
That's fair.
So,
I
yeah,
agree.
sorry. Didn't want to get into the pros and cons in too detailed unless it comes to that.
Yeah.
I think this is a good start, what they presented. There are possibilities, but we don't have to make those decisions tonight by any stretch.
Okay, so I have a bunch of questions.
All right, I just want to make sure Peter hasn't said anything yet.
Oh,
So
okay.
Peter.
Okay, sorry.
I just have one question. I call this a parachute in type of meeting. So I just parachuted into the Weston Public School District. I'm hearing the superintendent start with her first slide. And I'm like, these guys have their act together. This is a great school district. they're on it, right? So then my question is, I see all these models and questions, and it's, what problem are they trying to solve? I don't even know what they're trying to solve with this because they seem to have their act together. So that's the open question. What are we trying to solve here? Maybe that question gets answered in 3 or 6 months from now, but that's my question. For someone who parachuted in and goes, wow, this is great. I wish my school district, I just parachuted in at this.
Okay. All right. Thank you. In terms of what problem are we trying to solve? I think as we look at our facilities, we want to make sure that they're educationally appropriate. We want to make sure that they're of standards and quality that are representative of Weston excellence. We want to make sure our buildings are efficiently used. And we also, whatever the solution or the changes that might be needed around, at least beginning at the middle school, what happens is that we're also sort of fiscally looking that we're as responsible as we can be. So sometimes that means moving around the status quo. I'm not saying it will or it is or any of that, but it might. So if it came to that, I suggest we have looked at these puzzle pieces and we have some answers. So we're not going to start from scratch if it gets to that point. So that would be my answer to your question, Peter. Nicole, I'm sorry. I know you have lots more. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Thank you. So I do have a question or a comment similar to what Peter kind of said is, I think it would be really helpful to add our current model to this chart to compare it, because when I look at this chart, and I don't know if other people feel this way, I'm feeling like I have to pick a model, but maybe actually the model that we have is the one to pick if we don't have to worry about the facilities reconfiguration. And so by not hearing about our current model in each of these rows and categories, I don't get to hear about the strengths of the current model. And so maybe the current model is a good model. And so I think that would be great. My second thing is that, I mean, this is so well organized. It's really digestible. I would love to talk in the next communications meeting about putting this as an attachment to the bricks and mortar, because I think so many parents would be interested in seeing this and really understanding, but also being able to understand it with the current model, to understand the pros and cons of the current model. Because when we're all talking about these transitions from grade to grade, maybe the model that we have right now is the appropriate transition. But it's just hard to see that when I'm only looking at other options that I'm feeling like we're trying to choose. So yeah, and so it kind of made me also want to know, like, what do principals feel about the current model? And
Nicole,
Erica.
look, can I just say thank you for that? I will add our current model in here. And I'm remiss that I didn't do it initially. Tina's like, aren't you going to add the current model? And I said, well, they didn't ask me to research that when they asked me to research these 5, but I think you have a wonderful point here. And so I will add it in. And I also tried to start with our current model. And I know it came at the beginning of a very long, comprehensive overview of many other models, but it did say that our current grade configuration aligns very strongly with the academic considerations outlined in this chart. And our structure, it preserves the standards bands, right? K2, 3, 5, 6, 8. It supports developmentally appropriate instructional models, including the grade 5 dyad and the established teaming. It enables continuity of services for our ELL students, our special education students, and related services with minimal disruption. It limits the number of transitions while still allowing students to develop the leadership identity that they have in our current model as they move through each building, which I think is really nice for grade 2 students to feel like they're the oldest students in a building. That gets lost in every other model, right? And then from an academic standpoint, it provides a balanced, stable framework that we know already supports instructional quality and student belonging. And it really allows us to focus our energy on improving teaching and learning than trying to manage or mitigate some of the other risks that surface with some of the other models. So that was a great on-ramp for me just to reiterate all of that. We'll put it in the chart, but now I'll let the principal speak about the model as well.
Erica, I love what you just said about those leadership opportunities. Our fifth graders have a phenomenal amount of leadership opportunities. We have a wonderful student council. We see them starting their own clubs and being in charge of them and taking some ownership and autonomy in that. We see them asking to lead different things, to be supportive. And we just did a whole assembly on respect, and our fifth grade students basically led that assembly to support the rest of the student body. And I was really proud of our students being part of that. And I really, really enjoy seeing this leadership opportunity that's really embraced and supports them in their development to feel very confident in themselves as they move on to the middle school. So that's something I really love about the model that we currently have.
I would echo that at the early elementary years. It's been wonderful for our second graders to be able to shine in that way. They know they're the role models of the building. They know they're the leaders of the building. And at a very young age, they're able to really embrace that and shine in so many ways, academically, socially, emotionally. So when we bring the school together, we do lean on our second graders quite a bit to really help our youngest learners and students who are just starting school and learning what school is all about to look up to those students who aren't that much older than them, but old enough that they can really say, wow, that's going to be me in second grade someday. The other advantage, I think, of the current model is having that K-2 continuum for those foundational skills that Erica spoke so much in depth about. Is in K-2, we really talk a lot about learning to read and building all of those foundational skills with, some comprehension, of course, but the focus is more on the foundational skills and the learning to read. And then in 3 to 5, it really shifts from reading to learn. And we're very much able to focus on that and really wrap our arms around how, those critical beginning years and making sure all of those skills and habits are solid for students as they learn to read and also learn how to manage a school environment with fewer transitions.
Yeah, I think for all the reasons that have been mentioned, I support and like the 6-8 model as well. I think just to add on a few other quick points, I think sixth graders are ready for the independence. The middle school environment is different than an intermediate, than an elementary environment. Students do have more independence. I think sixth graders are ready for that and like that. I also think we've started to do a lot of things where we've put our eighth graders in more leadership roles with younger students, and I think it gives them an opportunity to mentor sixth graders in some ways, which I think is important for eighth graders. Um, that's a benefit of the system too. And I also mentioned earlier, just as the content becomes more complex and sophisticated, um, I think having the sixth grade up with the seventh and eighth grade, we have, um, as the math becomes more sophisticated, as we're looking to challenge and enrich kids, I think it works better as a model. So.
Similarly, when I first read Model A and you write, oh, this is a great option because it minimizes transitions. I'm also wondering, what does everyone think about 3 transitions in school versus 4? Is that like, I know that Erica, in response to David's question before, you said, oh, well, you have to weigh the positives, the negatives, and I mean, Miss Cadis was talking about it, the transitions are hard for these younger learners. So is it better to just go K through 4?
Pre-K to 4, pre-K to 5 is a very common model. A lot of districts have that. I had a pre-K to 5 school for many years. The beauty of a pre-K to 2 model, now that I've had it for 13 years, it really allows for a focus on those early elementary years and all of the wonderful things that come with that early transition into school. But certainly a pre-K to 4, pre-K to 5 model is very common and more, traditional in schools to have an elementary school, a middle school, and a high school in districts.
Okay.
Either one works.
Right. And I don't mean to cut anybody off, but I also, like I was trying to say with David, these are pieces of a puzzle that we may or may not need to use. So we're not about to make a change just to make a change. We're not redesigning the Weston Public Schools from scratch. We're needing to know what the educational impacts would be if, and I only say if with like capital letters, if it would come to that, based on what we also see with our facilities. Sometimes within a district, no matter what district it is, you have to kind of figure out what's the best mix of facility and grades. So that's why we asked for these puzzle pieces. If we had to do something, if we had to make a change, if it looked like that was the way to go, what would happen if certain grade levels, grade configurations emerged? And I think Erica and her team have done a great job tonight of putting that forth. But until it comes to needing to decide internally how a grade 5 through 8 school works, we don't really have to get that far into so-called the weeds. The same thing with the number of transitions. If we don't have to change what we have, we don't really need to have a discussion about which is better, 3 or 4. We have to hear the other pieces of the puzzle, which I think are coming at the end of the month. And then, I appreciate everybody's energy and interest in wanting to sort of start talking, but we still have another piece of the puzzle to hear, which is the report from SLAM, looking at the middle school specifically and looking at costs of renovating or building new. And then I think and we've heard from the town a little bit about what their look at our campus facilities and the overlap that might exist with the town, what that is. And then it's our job to put it all together. But I just don't want to get down the road too far in any one of these models right now until it looks like we really need to do that. So I just don't want to jump the gun. So, Lisa, I can't see, I don't see everybody's face, so I'm not sure. You wanted to
Deborah,
say
I think
anything?
Deborah, I think you've echoed my sentiment 100%. I think Erica and team did a wonderful job of showing us, academic and social and emotional excellence is what Weston is about. And as we look at SLAM and the choices that we're going to have to make, that academic and social and emotional support that we give our students comes into light. And they've given us a wonderful rubric over, as we make those decisions, what can be an issue as we go forward. So not only are we looking at facilities, but we're looking at continued academic excellence and support for our students. And so this put it in wonderful perspective, because as we go into our next meeting and look at SLAM and their report, we now have another support as we have to make those choices. So thanks a lot, Erica and team. It's been really clear and really helpful.
You're welcome.
Okay, again, I can't see everybody who may or may not want to speak. Oh, there, sorry. So I don't mean to cut anybody off, but I also don't want to get ahead of ourselves. So I'm trying to do that balancing act. So are there any other questions or concerns or comments that board members want to make? Any staff members who we have shortchanged or I cut you off before unnecessarily? I apologize. Okay, all right. Erica, and again, and your whole staff, thank you very much. This is a lot for the board to digest. If we have questions about what does this mean, or, any technical questions, I would suggest that we email them to Erica, and maybe she can provide some answers. And Nicole, I think the suggestions about communicating this through bricks and mortar or through the communications committee, this becomes really important. Nicole, I like the suggestion about adding the current model, just embedding it, in chart form. If it fits, I think that would be an easier read. And then we have to gear up for next facilities meeting, which is February 23rd, and SLAM is on the agenda. And I think that will, like tonight, that will be another sort of rather long conversation. So I really am thankful that tonight we got to look at the grade configuration piece, and then we have to change gears and look at the sort of middle school condition and hear the pros and cons about renovating or building new or whatever else SLAM needs to tell us. And then if we keep to our timeline, March, I think, is the time for the board to start having a lot of the conversations as we have been having tonight about, well, what is the best thing to do? And that's where we start putting all the pieces together. So a lot of work in front of us. So I appreciate the fact that people rescheduled tonight. I look forward to the end of the month, changing gears, but again, hearing more parts of the puzzle. And then we really have to start discussing as a board what our best recommendations will be. So any other comments for tonight?
I just want to say thank you to the board for the thoughtful charge that guided this work. We really, really appreciate it. And I just also want to thank you for the collaborative spirit and nature of this evening, and for the contributions of the principals and everyone else. Very much appreciated.
Thank you. All right, we see the list of, oh no, we need the updates first. Superintendent's update.
I do not have any updates this evening.
All right, thank you. Communications committee, I'm not sure you've had a meeting, but is there an update?
Well, we did have the meeting where
okay.
we developed the bricks and mortar, and Nicole was the editor.
Oh yeah,
of
I'm
the
sorry.
thing, and-
Yeah,
right.
okay.
And it got published, and I heard it was mentioned at the Grammys last night as one of the best read articles or something like that. So, bricks and mortar. Stay tuned for the next edition next month.
All right, thank you. Curriculum committee.
Curriculum meeting is on Wednesday, so we haven't met yet.
Okay. The EOC has not met yet this month. Finance and operations.
We'll be meeting next week, next Friday.
Okay. Policy.
We're meeting tomorrow morning at 9.
Okay. Safety and security.
We're meeting next Tuesday.
Okay.
We have a lot to report at the end of the month.
All right, there's what's next? Updates from CABE. Are there CABE updates? Lisa, am I right?
Yeah, the January CABE edition, they have an excellent article on policy, just tells you how well Sharon is running her committee, and so the policy gives a real brief summary of how policy committees work. And this edition talks about the educational cost sharing and SEED, special education and expansion development. And those are some good articles. February 5th, there is a state policy meeting, the February 25th and March 19th. There are webinars on financial oversight and the budget. So those might be things that you'd like to look at.
All right. Yeah, good things to highlight. Thank you. CES, is there an update from CES?
Nothing noteworthy.
Okay. And Weston Education Foundation.
We're meeting tomorrow night.
All right, all these future meetings. Anyway, thank you all for doing that work in advance. You see the schedule of our next Board of Ed meetings, and All right, without any further comments, is there
Can
a
I make a
motion?
comment?
Oh, of course.
A real compliment to the performing arts.
Yes.
Weston Middle School had its musical, Short Wharf, The Addams Family, and they did a great job. I mean, the kids were really into it, right? They had very good direction. But the takeaway from the evening was that one of the young men got sick and couldn't perform. So the directors called upon a senior from the company to fill in with like an hour's notice or something like that. The young man learned all the lines, did all 3 performances, so he gave up his weekend to participate with the younger students, and then went to the cast party. I thought that was great.
That is commendable, so thank you.
I'd also like to commend WIS. Their day of service and the PTO was outstanding. I wasn't there, but my husband was there with Kiwanis, and he just said he was amazed at the organization, at the students from the Bridgeport Sister School and WIS, how they organized, worked together, worked really, really hard, and did an amazing job. So kudos to WIS and their PTO.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. That's great to highlight.
And I
Hey,
also
I don't like to make a meeting longer, but I just have to say that I was so proud of the entire WIS community. So Lisa, thank you for that. The WIS students and families packaged 10,000 packages of soup to be donated, amongst many other things, to give to our veterans, to our Women's Center, to PAWS, to our sister school, to so many different organizations. It was truly amazing, and I loved watching it happen and be there, and I really did get to watch it because it's kudos to the PTO for those friends did an amazing job of organizing. It was our first time doing it, an inaugural event, and I really hope that it happens again. It was really wonderful to see the community and the school community come together in such a beautiful way. So thank you for shouting that out, Lisa, and giving me the opportunity to say how great it was.
It was great.
I also attended the Hurlbut Day of Service, and I don't have the final numbers from the PTO, but it was a very lovely, well-attended, well-executed event. And Peter, I went to the show, and I also thought it was incredible how the senior student stepped in to save it. And it was a really, really good, entertaining show.
Great. Okay. All right.
Such
Well, let's-
great and wonderful things happening across the district.
Yeah.
So please, when you get invitations, like come. We welcome your presence to experience and enjoy what we get to on a daily basis.
Oh, thank you. All right. Well, that's great to end on such great news. Any other comments? All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody, for your discussion
Thank
and
you.
hard work
you.
tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you. Bye.